So as I said, universal screening for gestational diabetes in the Indian scenario is a need because of the high ethnicity that we suffer from. So we need to screen most of our diabetic patients for gestational diabetes. Now this I have just simplified to for the ease of understanding that the criteria is very simple. Now these are the latest criteria for diagnosis. Now if you see that the confusion between 75, 50 and 100 grams has gone. So it is only 75 gram glucose that you need to use. If you are following the ADA, you have to decide which guidelines you are going to follow for your lab. If you are following the ADA guidelines, then 92 is the fasting, 180 is the 1 hour PG and 153 is the 2 hour PPG. And any two of the three values need to be abnormal for diagnosis. If you are following the WHO criteria, it's 105 and 140. Now, as per my clinical assessment and knowledge and my specialty of practice, I would always prefer the lower side. So, I usually recommend the ADA criteria. So, two of these values getting abnormal, I label the patient as gestational diabetes. Now, mind you, the targets of control. Now, this same patient is on treatment and she comes to you next time. There is no need to do a OGTT. You need not give her 75 gram glucose. That's a very common thing which happens in labs. The patient has to do a regular fasting and post meal. And this fasting and post meal targets are below 95 and below 120 preferably when the patient is coming at subsequent follow-up of treatment. And in India actually we recommend that we use a lower cutoff because of the high adiposity and the risks associated. So below 90 and below 120 are the cutoffs which are recommended in the Indian patients. So this need not be done with a OGTT. Please note this because patients are tired drinking the glucose load. I am sure most of the patients are very unhappy with the irritation that caused by the glucose drinks. So as I said that why this 140 cutoff has been put for the screening is because it has been found that it's associated a lot of adverse maternal and fetal outcomes, and not only to the mother but even the offsprings eventually are at risk of diabetes later in life. So it is better to have a better control of diabetes and monitor them at timely intervals. And if the patient by chance has a intermediate range between 120 to 139, this patient can actually be keenly follow up on case to case basis and you can reach a diagnosis. It may not be mandatory for you to wait for 7 months of pregnancy. You can ask the patient to come back after a month and then recheck on that. Postpartum also, a 75 gram OGTT at 6 weeks needs to be done to confirm what is her glycemic status. So 10% of diabetic pregnancies would still continue to have diabetes. So you need a confirmation, and if the reports are normal, then you need to monitor 3 yearly thereafter, and at the time of next pregnancy, a GCT is mandatory at diagnosis and at 24 to 28 weeks based on what criteria you are following. So to summarize in terms of glucose, it has been found that there was a controversy regarding HbA1c used for diagnosis. So now they have well defined this, and this controversy of cutoff still remains. So there is a lot of controversy still existing. What about GDM? GDM diagnosis has been made relatively easy, but again every year I keep on presenting this topic and every year I change my criteria. So that's again an issue which needs to be thought of. Then screening of asymptomatic individual, all Indians are at moderate risk, and so all patients need to be screened. Which is better? As I said, PPE-BG is superior and specific. Then fasting is very sensitive and HbA1c is more practical. So it is up to you what you feel is adequate for your patient and your setting. So if you are asked about which one to do, you can give the option to the patient, or ideally I would go for all three. So antibody testing in type 1 diabetes and adults, as I specified those criteria, if they suffice you can do it. What about glucometric testing? Not to be done for diagnosis. It has to be confirmed by lab venous value. What about genetic testing for diabetes? There are a lot of genetic assays coming up for MODY and other types of diabetic nephropathy evaluation. I think that's not the preview of the topic today, so but there is a lot of future into genetics coming into assessment of diabetes again. So then I come to the next section of complications. So Diabetic complications that we commonly can be helped with the labs is diabetic nephropathy. And it has been found that with type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes, the prevalence of microalbuminuria is very high. And if type 1 diabetes usually start this after a period, average period of about 5 to 7 years. So they need a screening after 5 years of onset of diabetes. While type 2 diabetes, at the time of diagnosis, nearly about 20 to 30% patients will have microalbuminuria. So they may require microalbuminuria at the time of diagnosis and may require annual evaluation if they are positive for microalbuminuria. Now there is a lot of query about proteinuria, albuminuria. This term protein albumin is a confusion and a mess to everybody. So one needs to understand that urine secretes various types of protein. We know that it secretes albumin, it secretes Tom Hursfeld proteins, it secretes cystatin, other types of protein. So when we are talking about proteinuria, we are talking of the whole set of proteins that are produced in the urine. When we are talking about albumin, we are talking of only one portion of this protein. So it has been found that albumin is the earliest marker, and now it has been found that prior to albumin, cystatin is the earliest marker of diabetic nephropathy. So if you are trying to assess nephropathy at the earlier stage, I would prefer that you go for an albumin assessment, not a protein assessment, because methodologies do differ and the criteria are more defined for microalbuminuria. Now, if albumin is the smallest of the protein, and if that passes through your kidney, it indicates the earliest sign of a leak, glomerular leak. When you are getting proteinuria, you're actually having a much more severe renal damage. So you don't want to pick up patients when they have already got damage. So recommended is to test for albumin. Now if you don't have albumin assessments, then you can think of protein. But then you need to use the criteria for protein, not for albumin in that scenario. So how do you know that this is that this is possibly a non-diabetic disease, and there you may require to go ahead with a renal biopsy and so on and so forth. Now this classification is what we have been using for therapeutic guidance. So nowadays we have been following the eGFR and the create clearance on a ritual basis. I would recommend that you also make this a habit too, because this is what is clinically recommended for us to monitor patients. So if I have a report which already gives me this as a ready format for diabetic patients at least, not for pre-screening. But if you have it for a diabetic patient, it can help my use of medications. Like for example, if I have a eGFR of 30 to 60, this patient has microalbuminuria, but this patient is a contraindication or a relatively cautious use of metformin. So I will not give metformin to this patient if I have a eGFR associated with that. Same patient of microalbuminuria can have a eGFR of 60 to 90. There I will always think that I can give something like a metformin as a drug to this patient. So it can help my decision making if I have that as an additive benefit. So these are the stages, and the benefit of assessing this is that if you see microalbuminuria is already the third stage of nephropathy. So you have already missed the bus prior to diagnosing the microalbuminuria. So most of the patients tell me that it's only trace, or it's only 1 plus or 2 plus. That 1 plus, 2 plus is scary to me, because that is the time when I know that this patient is going to land up with ESRD soon. So that is the kind of awareness one needs to have. What about nephropathy evaluation? So what tests in the lab can be performed? Urine routine, of course, for urine tract infections, renal function tests, then urine albumin create ratio, 24 hours urinary albumin, eGFR, create clearance, and urinary cystatin or serum cystatin. Now this is yet to be available in the routine testings, but this is what I commonly do. So this is what you can choose. I am not confirming that everything needs to be done in everyone, but these are the options which are available in our setting and can be done easily.